Welcome to another Whispers from the Wood. In this episode, we're going to be looking at a species which we missed out in our August Wild Food webinar. It's the sea buckthorn. And it's a tree that, if you can find it, can make some excellent forage food at this time of year. But as the name suggests, this is a thorny plant, so proceed with caution. Sea buckthorn berries are one of those wild foods which have been labelled as a superfood because they're absolutely packed full of good stuff and great health benefits. In fact, just 100 grams of the berry juice contains many more times your daily allowance of vitamins C and E. Like many berries, they contain high levels of antioxidants. They also contain fatty acids, including omega-3 and 6. They also have some vitamin A and B in them. There's some other natural acids in there. There's minerals and oils as well. It's definitely one of those berries that you could count as a multivitamin tablet all in one. These do make an excellent wild food, as long as you like sour flavours, because like crab apples, these contain a very high level of malic acid, so they are very, very sour. But they're also quite citrusy in flavour as well, and at this time of year, early in the season, you can pick them off the branch fairly easily. Later in the year, they get much more watery and they'll just disintegrate and pop as you touch them. But let's just squeeze a bit into the mouth now. Oh, that's sour. But it's also very, very refreshing as well. And very citrusy, much like biting into a lemon. And actually, in Scandinavia, they make a sauce out of this fruit as an accompaniment for fish, much like we use lemon with fish over here. Be warned though, sea buckthorn berries can have a strong laxative effect in some people. So try them out and see how they agree with you before you really indulge in a big cupful of sea buckthorn juice. And because there are so many berries on each branch, they're so densely clustered together, you can gather a lot of food very quickly. I've also read that if you want to preserve the goodness in these berries, it's best to parboil them before storing them away. Unless, of course, you're going to drink the juice raw, in which case you'll get all the goodness, but be prepared for a really sour hit. There are two methods to harvesting the berries from the sea buckthorn. The first is the less messy of them, and that's to get some secateurs and to cut some of the berry-bearing branches off the tree itself. Now this can seem quite destructive, but the tree is very prolific at regrowing, so a bit of hard pruning is not going to do it any harm in the long run. Now when I get home, I'll put these branches in a couple of black plastic bin bags and then put those in the freezer. Once it's frozen, I'll take it out and then give it a good beating inside the bag, and that means that the berries should drop off from the branch and gather at the bottom of the bags, and then we can separate them a little bit more easily. There will still be some leaves and twigs and the inevitable insect mixed in there, but that's all part of the foraging fun. It's to be expected. The second method of gathering the berries is a bit messier, which means it's more fun. And for that, you're going to need a large bucket to gather your forage food in. And also, I brought some gloves with me. Now, you don't need to have gloves. I've got them because I'm operating electronic camera equipment, as well as potentially getting juice all over my hands, as you're about to see. But if you use a careful method, you shouldn't have to wear gloves to avoid the thorns. And I'll show you how that works now. Right, so this is where it gets messy. Let's get these gloves on first. I've got my clean food pot ready to go. What I'm going to do is grab the branch at the base, squeeze the berries, and as I do that, slide my hand forward to the tip of the branch, and that way I'll avoid the thorns because you're going in the same direction as them, so they should get squashed down as your hand slides along the branch. Let's give it a go. This is all theory, of course. It's the first time I've done this. But hey, you've got to put these things into practice, haven't you? This is a really messy job. It's quite good fun though, bursting all the berries. It's just as well there's a lot of goodness in these berries to make it worth all the effort. They must have known that back in ancient times. Not, of course, all about the different vitamins and minerals, but they must have known it was good for you and good food. There's a lot of wood and leaves going into this. Now I haven't been squeezing the berries into the bucket for very long before I've stopped, because I've noticed that they're not mushing into as much of a juice as I've seen done before when I've seen this method used. And I think that's because of the time of year. In August and early September, the berries are a little firmer, so they're less prone to just bursting and the juice running into the bucket. Later in the year, they soften off much more, and so that happens much more readily. So I'm thinking at this time of year, early in the season, the best method is going to be cutting the branches off, taking them home in the bags, freezing them, and doing it that way. But without experimenting and trying out, we don't learn, so we've got to give it a go. So what am I going to do with these berries? Well, first of all, I'm going to make a fruit leather with them. That's a very ancient way of preserving berries and their goodness right through winter. Secondly, I'm going to give some over to Lee for her berry brandy pot, which is something she's been creating since summer, and it's showing a story of the seasons as different layers of berries, as they become ripe, are layered on top of one another. And thirdly, I'm going to try juicing some of these up and seeing if I can make a citrusy, punchy sauce from them to go alongside fish, just like they have in Scandinavia. Well, there's a fantastic citrusy smell coming from this bucket now. It smells really good. The only other thing I could think of to improve this method at this time of year would be to keep gathering a lot of volume into this bucket and then squeeze again all the material between my hands and try to separate the juice that way from the flesh of the berries, the twigs and the leaves. I have to be wary, of course, of the thorns, because I wouldn't be doing the stroking down the branch method for any thorns that are in there, so to be careful. And also it's going to be quite labour intensive, so I guess it depends how much time you've got. I'm back at home now, and those sea buckthorn branches laden with berries have been double bagged and they've been in the freezer for a couple of days. So now with my trusty foraging stick, we're going to give them a whack to see if we can separate those berries from the sticks and the leaves. I've been giving it quite a whack there, and quite a lot of the berries have separated to the bottom of the bag, but along with that you've got the leaves that are separated as well. So there'd be yet another stage to do to separate the berries from those leaves. And as you can see, quite a lot of the berries are still stuck to the branch. Now I could just carry on whacking it, but I don't want to damage the fruit. However, what I can do is pick them off individually, and because they're frozen they're not going to burst, and they can go easily into a bowl or into the bottom of the bag. But you read about these techniques of processing the berries and it's all well and good, but if you don't try them, you don't know if they really work or not. Here's Lee and baby Baron on buckthorn picking duties. How's it going?
Okay, I wouldn't say Baron's all that helpful, but he's quiet, so hey ho.
I thought I'd give it a go with a couple of other options. I've got my berry comb that I usually reserve just for wimberry picking, and I've also tried picking off the berries with a fork. And the berry comb is far too unwieldy, and the fork's okay, but it's much quicker just to do it with your fingers. So it's a bit laborious, and I've got to work quite quickly before the berries thaw out, become too squishy under my fingers. There really is no better tool designed than the human hands. You've got to watch those thorns though, they are vicious. One other trick to try would be to put the whole lot in a bowl and give it a shake. See if the berries, which are heavier, move down to the bottom of the bowl, so it's easy to separate the leaves at the top. This is bushcraft really, just experimenting and seeing what works. Well, it's been about half an hour of work to get it to this point, and what I found worked really well was passing the material between two bowls, and a lot of the green leaves would stick to the side of the bowl and you could wipe them off each time, but certainly that shaking back and forth did a good job in separating the material. And I can imagine back in the time of our ancestors in prehistory, people doing this around the campfire or in the village with a large willow basket, shaking it back and forth and separating those berries. So the final stage will be to separate the juice from the stones and all the other little bits and pieces which are in here. And to do that, I'll probably push all these berries through either a sieve or a potato ricer. Currently, this is looking far too watery to make a fruit leather out of. I don't think that's going to work. But as a refreshing drink or a sauce, it might serve much better. Well, I've got the fresh juice now separated. Only thing left is to try it. Oh, that really hits you. It's like extreme sunny delight. You can decide whether that's a good or bad thing or not. But it's certainly refreshing and very citrusy. How are we going to improve that then? Well, I think adding some honey to it to sweeten it off. I'll gently warm it in the pan so the honey melts in there, and I think that's going to make a really nice drink. I could also experiment with heating it further to drive off some more of the moisture, seeing if the sauce will thicken, and then we can get something that could accompany a fish dish. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this episode inspirational. And if you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it, then you can see episodes of this series early over on our Patreon Tribe page, where you also get a whole host of other benefits, including exclusive video content with wild food walks, with bushcraft, with forest school activities, and well-being in nature. So follow the link in the description to check that out. And I'll see you again soon for another Whispers from the Wood.